We are on the way to Sylvania Wilderness. We are entering Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Hello!
$4 not charged. I thought you were going to dump a handful of change in my hand.
No. We're at Fumi Roadside Park and we're gonna check out Fumi Falls off Highway 2. There's also a staircase on top of the falls. Another set of falls up above. Dinner at Carlos Cantina, Iron Mountain. We stopped for dinner at the Carlos Cantina in Iron Mountain. This is Golden Lake State Forest Campground. Our first night between Iron River and Waters meet. And there's Golden Lake. There's no potable water. There is an outhouse of toilet paper and it is free camping. Friday, September 30th at 8:06, Golden Lake. We're on Thousand Island Lakes Road, getting close to the Sylvania Wilderness entrance. Here's the Sylvania Wilderness as left here into Sylvania Wilderness. This is the Sylvania Wilderness campground, just taking a drive through it. This is a check-in area for Sylvania Wilderness where you pay your fees. We didn't have to pay anything after September 30th. We are at the Crooked Lake loading area where we're putting our kayaks in. Crooked Lake loading spot and we are ready to go. Here's our kayaks. We're on the water. There's a loading zone. And here is Crooked Lake and we're heading to Badger #1 campsite. And it is a beautiful day. Just saw a beaver swimming around already. A few of the leaves are changing now. Paul, how you like your new kayak? Working out pretty good? Awesome. Pretty nice day out here. Pretty quiet and peaceful out here. Oh! That's the south end of Crooked Lake. Our campsite should be straight ahead and Squirrel's campsite should be right here. This is a Squirrel campsites. We're getting close to Badger 1 campsite. Should be just up ahead. We arrived at Badger 1 campsite. Here we are. Looks nice. This is Badger. We're there. This is the Oru kayak and this is where everything's stored in the back. And that's how you get the stuff out. And then I have to take the top off the front, pull the stuff out of there. Here's our site. Here's my gear. I got the stove, odds and ends. I got my sleeping bag, food, tent, and my clothes. It all fit in my kayak pretty easily, actually. There's the tent. Got my Neo Air. I got my heavy sleeping bag on this trip, so I'll stay warm. And got my Sierra Designs tent this time instead of my Z-Packs. Filling up the mattress. Rick found a nice spot for his tent. Rick, what do you think of this place? Give me the thumbs up.
It's almost as good as
Here's Badger 1 camp. Our fire pit is up there. Badger 1. This is going to be my typical lunch. Dorp, Slim Jims, pudding, protein bar, and peanut butter and tortillas. Just finished lunch. Here's Crooked Lake from our campsite. Got some very large hemlocks in our site. This is a trail going up to our fire pit. Have to try to find our outhouse. Here's our fire pit. Maybe our outhouse is up here. There's our pit toilet. Paul's launching his kayak. We're gonna head over this way to a portage to Clark Lake. Here's the portage to Clark Lake. We're starting our 0.3 mile portage to Clark Lake. On the way to Clark Lake, you can do it.
Okay.
There's the portage back to Crooked Lake. We made it out to Clark Lake, and we're going to circumnavigate Clark Lake.
Pines to campground.
There's a Pine 2 campsite. Nice one. We're heading north on Clark Lake. Golden Silence Lake is just over this ridge. You can almost see it from Clark Lake. There it is. Got a beautiful maple tree. Don't see many of these large rocks. Swimming area to the campground over on the north end of Clark Lake. Island near the north end of Clark Lake. We're heading back south on Clark Lake on the east side of the lake. We're heading back south on Clark Lake, and there's Cedar campsite. I just bottomed out. We're almost back to the portage. Heading from Clark Lake to Crooked Lake. Really pretty in here. This kayak is pretty light. If we carry it over my head or like this, either way, it works pretty well. Made it back to Crooked Lake. That was a large old paper birch. Hey Rick, we're almost to Crooked Lake.
Hi, Paul.
Hi ho. Hi ho, it's off to work we go. It is mucky getting these things in and out, and our campsite's straight ahead. Here's some trumpeter swans with their cygnets. They have black beaks, not orange, like a mute swan.
Hey.
Rick's got some firewood, hauling it up. Rods over the propane stove. Rick's got some potatoes.
Sausage, cheese.
I was doing some tuna and
Chicken and potatoes.
cheese. We're doing dinner Friday night, our first night at Badger One, and it is a gorgeous night. Course number 2, baked beans. Hang in the food bags. They should be safe from the bear and deer and many chipmunks. I'm heading over to Squirrel campsites to see if I can find the otters. There's a beaver just slapped his tail and went under. There's the trumpeter swans. Good night.
Good night.
Don't snore tonight. I just found this in my tent. Very scary. Let's get out of bed and another beautiful day in the sky. I heard some kind of animals out here last night by my tent. Morning water fill up. Rick's got his water bag. There's a fancy backpacking filter. It's an otter. See ya, Paul. I'm gonna head out and do a loop of the lakes. Started here, went up around. Check out Lilas Lake, Mountain Lake, up to East Bear Lake, West Bear Lake, Kerr Lake, High Lake, cruised around there, and then back to Crooked Lake. Walked over to Corey Lake, back to camp. There's a smoke hanging in the air from the Fisher campsite. Good Crooked Lake. I'm heading north along the east edge of Crooked Lake. Right up there's the island. Gorgeous day. On my way to Mountain Lake, pretty close, just up that way. Box 1 and 2 campsite should be just around this corner a little ways. Some big hemlocks. Just the portage to Mountain Lake. A nice easy portage to Mountain Lake. It'll take me about 1 minute. There it is, Mountain Lake. Mountain Lake. There's Bear 1 and Bear 2 campsites. Here's Lilas Lake. Cool little lake next to Bear Camp. There's Bear Camp back in there. That's a really nice one here. Mountain Lake. There's a swamp going into a little interior lake. Pretty cool in here. That's the end of it. It's another little lake just south of Ermine Camp. A lot of tamarack trees in here. There's Ermine Camp number 2, and straight ahead is Lynx campsites. There's Lynx 1 and 2. And straight ahead is a 3-mile portage to East Bear Lake. That's my portage to East Bear Lake. This is Mountain Lake from the north end, looking south. Gorgeous. Pretty easy portage so far. Flat. Pretty easy portage. Did it all in one shot without having to stop. So 3 miles goes pretty fast when you're doing a little portage. And there's Lake, East Bear Lake. There's the end of the portage.
Water dripping through the leaves, I can't sleep.
Here's Deer 1 and 2 campsites. There's Deer 1. Looks pretty nice. There's Wolf campsite. Just past the Wolf campsite. Very peaceful little lake here on East Bear Lake. Exploring some coves on East Bear Lake. No, it doesn't. Coming up to the portage to West Bear Lake. Portage to West Bear Lake. Right under a cedar. East Bear Lake was a nice little lake. Didn't take long to circumnavigate. Coming to the portage to West Bear Lake. And this one's only 0.1 miles, so it should be very simple. And I can already see West Bear Lake. And here's West Bear Lake. Nice muddy entrance. It's like a pretty little lake. West Bear Lake to have my lunch. Looking for a landing spot on the island. This is a perfect spot for lunch on this little island on West Bear Lake. Got wintergreen growing, still got the berries. No animals got out here to get them. Great spot for lunch today. There's Coyote campsite right over there. Just finished lunch. West on the north side of West Bear Lake. Swamp area on the north side of West Bear Lake. Swamp on the north edge of West Bear Lake. It is helpful to have a compass so you can tell which side of the lake you're on. So the portage is right over there. I think I see the portage up ahead. This is going to be a 0.3 mile portage. I think this is it. It's a really strange spot. You gotta cross all these logs, so it's very difficult to get to shore. There's West Bear Lake at the portage to Kerr Lake. It was crazy how hard it was to get out of the water here, but I see a trail. This is the portage going to Kerr Lake. Got some deadfalls on this one. Got a steep grade going down to Kerr Lake. Here's the entry point to Kerr Lake. There's a very easy portage, 0.3 miles, but there's Kerr Lake. Lots of little cranberries. Tastes pretty good. There's some small tamarack trees, deciduous evergreens. A lot of bog surrounding the edges of the lake. Here's the 0.1 mile portage to High Lake. Should be pretty easy. There's a very large hemlock. So pretty in here. There's High Lake. Arrived at High Lake. I'm on High Lake. And the portage is over there, but I'm going to go clockwise around this lake. High Lake. And there's a lot of people on this lake. This lake is very clear lake. Couple cool islands on High Lake and some big white pine on this edge of the lake and red pine and cedars. Here's looking north on High Lake. Here's Bobcat site. Just take a quick look at it. Looks pretty nice, pretty cool. So easy to walk out here with bare feet. Here's some fir pine cones, some of the smallest pine cones of all the firs and pines. And I was looking for the woody adelgid, which is a disease where the insect sucks the sap off the needles, but I guess it's not found in this area yet. And also the woolly looper is not found here yet either, so the hemlocks are doing pretty well. And an easy way to tell a hemlock from a fir is if you pull all the needles off. If you have a knob where the needles were, it's a hemlock. If there's a indentation, it's a fir. Coming up to the portage, Crooked Lake. Going to be a very short portage from High Lake to Crooked Lake. Portaging from High Lake to Crooked Lake. There's Crooked Lake, where we are camped. About a 1-minute portage. Here's Crooked Lake. Looks pretty quiet. Here's where I just came from, High Lake Portage. In 1987, Sylvania was declared as a federally designated wilderness. I think I found the path to Corey Lake. I'm going to walk over there and check it out. Maybe Rick and Paul are over there. Here's Crooked Lake. It's supposed to be 0.1 miles to Corey Lake through a beautiful hemlock and white pine forest. And there is definitely no need for shoes on this ground. Here's Corey Lake, and it is quiet, not a soul on the water. Wintergreen, starflower, red maple, sphagnum bog. There's a lot of ferns. This stuff feels so good to walk in. And the mushrooms like it too. There's Squirrel 2 campsite. There's the island in front of our campsite. And I see Rick and Paul's kayaks. I'm back at camp, and we've got neighbors over at Badger 2, and it is a gorgeous afternoon on Crooked Lake. Lots of club moss growing in the woods. Some puffballs. We are exploring around our camp. Some Christmas tree club moss. It's a stand of sugar maples. It's a yellow birch. Getting our fire going with birch bark and some kindling. This is our fire pit way up on the hill. Getting a fire going for steaks tonight. This is the easy way to get firewood without a saw. Yeah. There's our fire. Gonna grill some steaks tonight on the fire. We are cooking steak and potatoes over the fire tonight. You guys hungry tonight after a day of kayaking?
Yep.
There's the steaks. They are about done. There it is. Steak and potatoes for dinner. There's the trumpeter swans and their cygnets.